I want to bring up another factor, which actually is true with my family, is part of the reason like my mum migrated to the UK was because she had family members who had already migrated to the UK, as had been a long tradition in our sort of family tree. So I want to hear your thoughts, and I'll say mine, on that topic, because personally I think, family is slightly different from just like finding work or even like education. And it's just like being together with your closest ones, sort of starting a life like they have and knowing that they prospered. So, it's much easier for you to prosper and know how the system essentially works. So, so for my family, at least, who are split around the world, England has been for a while a place where a lot of them, have moved from like Trinidad to sort of find, to sort of just start a new life, whether that be to raise a family, find work, just somewhere to live where they might likely to earn more money, and and kind of live their life here. And what are your views on like family connections with like other countries?
I think first generation, right? Well, you have the first. I have different stages, right? You have the pioneer, the person who came to from wherever they come from to here, and then they fight and they try to put their values and their fighting spirit to the first generation. And I think when you come to second or third, now it becomes. I feel like it becomes less and less and less. And now the second generation is trying to put the third generation that you need to work hard, you need to da. But the third generation knows that we already got I know I have a house, or I have a safe spot. So then you aspire to become a musician or something more creative. I don't want to become a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever. So definitely, family has a big impact in this, and also has a big impact on how you integrate also. But I feel knowing and talking about this, I'm always so happy that, oh my God, I was looking at my family tree and all of them live in a village called Kidegembia in Tanzania. And then I see just myself, here in Tanzania. I'm like, oh my God, for millions and millions before me, have been in Africa, in Tanzania. And I am starting a story where my whole future generation are going to say, Vincent, Bigozi, he came to England and, he somehow, maybe he met an English lady, pioneered, English lady. And then, and so it's super nice. And that makes me proud also as an immigrant in this country. I'm like, wow, shit, I'm out here exploring, and I'm taking, I'm building my wealth, I'm building my career, I can help my family, and etc. So yeah.
I remember my grandmother on my mother's end, actually, she had a sister who's sadly passed away. But there was a time in Trinidad where, because of the connections between Trinidad and England, you wouldn't even need to just get a plane. There would be a boat that would take a hell of a long time, possibly maybe up to like at least 8 days of travel around that period. But they used to travel by boat on holiday and stop by in other places like Denmark on the way to England, and then travel by boat on the way back through all those days. And obviously now with airplanes and all the other sort of transport, it's little bit quicker. You could do it in a day. But some of the sort of connections between like countries in migration sometimes goes, very far back, even when it seemed almost impossible to sometimes get from one country to another.
Well, I'm a UK immigration lawyer, so I'm not sure how many other countries I would say, oh, look, their immigration system is fabulous. But I think there are criteria within an immigration system that you could look at and go, that's good or that's bad. So, for example, in the UK, we'd say transparency is clearly important. You need to know whether you're going to qualify or not. The business needs to know whether you're going to qualify or not. You don't want to make the application and go, oh, good Lord, didn't see that coming. That's part of the reason you have immigration lawyers, obviously. The other one is to make sure that you have a system that is efficient. If the whole thing is going to take 6 months, 8 months down the line, your business has changed by then. You don't want to be waiting that long. You need to know, you need to have certainty about when this application goes in and when you can expect to get it out. The UK is not bad on that on quite a few aspects, but on other aspects is pretty appalling. There are parts of our immigration system that quite literally rely on a lottery. And that's always quite difficult to explain to people because they just can't believe that we have a system that could rely on a lottery. But it does. But the rest of the system is not too bad. The other one is cost. The UK has one of the highest immigration costs of all. The Home Office makes absolutely billions. It would, of course, argue it needs billions to run an efficient system. And to that degree, it is quite efficient when you look at other countries. One of the aspects where I see that we're falling really short, and this is getting worse, and this alludes to my earlier point, is stability, having a stable, predictable immigration system. And by that I mean you don't have primary legislation every year, you don't have 3 to 4 changes in the immigration rules every year. We're about to have something that is going to affect retrospectively people already en route to settlement. As soon as you start having that, people don't know where they're going and there's uncertainty, people can't plan, that's bad. That's not a great immigration system.
Don't you think we should feel like a bit, in a way, like lucky that still as a country we're operating so well that we are attracting people here? Because there might come a time when actually it's not that attractive anymore. Like you can speak English, great, but and it's not saying that people are coming to kind of benefit from the system, but also where you go, you want safety, you want opportunity. I mean, that is what families are built, right? At the end of the day, it's kind of that Maslow hierarchy of needs. You need the safety first, and you can kind of build the rest of it. But I think we should be a bit grateful at the moment that people still do want to come here. Let's pace that instead of but we should be with that. And then I think with the world of social media, in our generation also, we're so open and we get to see so many different countries, so many different places and lifestyles that we want to live. There's a lot of people moving to Bali that doesn't have the sort of benefits that we have, but why are they there? And I think nowadays it's more about, okay, so that global view of, okay, let's see where else of the world can we go to. And I think people coming is just for an experience. It's become a bit more open rather than not knowing what that country looked like. I think our parents' generation or our grandparents made a leap of faith to come into different countries. They didn't know what it's going to be like. So as much as we say now, people know where they come, why they're coming, they didn't. They came in as just there might be an opportunity, there might be that British dream, that American dream, and that sort of thing, rather than I'm going there to get this from
or
that.
it's almost like that dream is, the probability is uncertain, but it's worth taking the risk because the reward could be massive.
Because what are they dealing with? They might be dealing with a really bad situation.
But this is why also I really, really don't agree with Brexit, what happened, because for me is that are immigrants that bad that your next generation are not going to be able to travel visa-free over 90 countries? For me, talking about, how, such a chance to, you're coming here working and you can travel and explore, opportunities in other places, but this is the base where you came from, right? And I feel like Brexit was a very big punch for the future generation. I really everything got more expensive. It's harder to travel. And I see my fellow British friends, we went abroad and they were also struggling getting in. They were going on queues.
I know, imagine having to give up now. When I finally got my British passport, I went, okay, this is not great. I'd rather have, Singaporean.
Can I just say something about Brexit? Because it worked out for me. I'm a third generation German Hong Kong person, I will say that. Because only due to Brexit, I was allowed to have British passport, because German is only like, you can't have dual passport.
Okay.
So it worked out well for me. I got my dual passport.
Oh, nice.
And I had to do my life in the UK, EU settlement, all that jazz, paid a heavy sum to be British naturalized. So in the end, you know, that
It worked
I
out.
didn't like it. I didn't like Brexit, but
Yeah.
it helped me.
But like, I'm thinking like, visa free. Like for me, it's like
The fee,
you can
yeah.
travel. We gave up all these countries. We could go and just start a life whenever we feel for. You have a daughter, or I have a son, and they love playing football, and they say, "Oh, the Spanish league, I really want to play there." And you can easily say, "You know what, son? Let me sort you out." You know, with no hassle. But now that is just, for me, I don't see any benefits at all. And also people argue that it's where, because of the, you know, immigrants like Polish or other European country could come into Britain. But think about it. Now we need to deal with all these boats or all of this, you know, migration by ourselves. I do believe unity makes things easier, because before, when migration came in, we could then ask maybe Germany, or we could spread it out, you know. It didn't have to deal it only in. So I feel like Brexit made it even worse, made this whole migration problem, you know, immigrant problem even bigger. And I don't understand who proposed
Do you
this.
know why they did Brexit? Because they wanted immigration to reduce,
But
right?
it just increased.
Same thing with what's happening. Now, what's the government doing? Bringing digital ID as a solution to illegal immigrant. There we go.
But I'd say on my experience, so as my mum and my mum's sister and all of them moved to England, when my grandfather passed away on my mum's end, my grandmother wanted to move to England to be closer to my mum and my sister. But because Brexit happened, the process that my mum and sister used to come to the UK, it was not the same to get my grandma to the UK.
Right.
So it was much more difficult trying to do that. And it's been going on for years where they've been trying to
I'm sorry.
sort of fill the papers and do all that's required. But because of the requirements and now all the restrictions and all the sort of barriers now to get into the UK, you know, that my grandmother doesn't have, that my mum and my aunt had because of their experience and their work and education. After trying for so long, eventually we sadly had to give up on it. So now my mum travels between Trinidad and the UK to see my grandma because to sort of help take care of her. And my grandma would come to the UK and go to Trinidad, although that's kind of become a bit less because of traveling back and forth, and with the limit of 6 months, or else you could have your visa removed and you wouldn't be able to come back again. But yeah, that's one of the things that if Brexit didn't happen, then the process of like family coming to one country and being able to get your other family member to get citizenship. Oh, I mean, partly it was other things. It wasn't all Brexit, but a lot of the difficulties of like finding a house and permanent residence were
because of Brexit
down to it. So in some ways it has affected things like that. And also, even when I go to France on the ferry, you know, you see more queues at the ticket places compared to what was there before because of like the line to get in and to prove your citizenship that you are, you know, a British citizen, or you have like paid or done the legal requirements to get into the country.
And talking about that, you know, not only, you know, you said about your family, it's also happening to every area of, for example, there's big rollies like on queue. So before, if you wanted, let's say, pineapple or whatever imported, they could easily say, oh, okay, from Spain or from, you know, wherever. Okay, it's fine. But now, and that's why groceries are going up on prices, you have a lot of rollies who are importing, which has to fill in different forms and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that is also making things more expensive. So I'm trying to think like what was the price of like our fear for migrate, like for immigrants was that big that we self-distracted? I don't really understand. I'm trying to find a reason why.
I think the way Brexit's changed immigration patterns has been that it didn't change how many people came to the UK, but it changed who made up those people who came to the UK. So one of the great ironies of Brexit was that, in part, it appealed to people who were scared that free movement meant that we would be overwhelmed by the number of Europeans coming to the UK because we couldn't stop it. Then Brexit happened, and then COVID happened, and we needed a whole load of care workers. We needed all sorts of other skills to be filled, and the Europeans decided not to come to the UK, and so these positions were filled by non-Europeans. So I don't know whether Nigel Farage, in his soothsaying abilities when he advocated Brexit and an end to free movement, envisaged that actually it wouldn't change the numbers, it would just mean that a lot of non-Europeans would come to the UK. And he seems to feel that certain cultures of those non-Europeans are at odds with being British in a way that perhaps he didn't necessarily with the Europeans. So I wonder whether he feels that's a huge success or not.
I think Brexit aside, though, you're talking about kind of the fees element, right? How much we've spent, and I know how much I've spent, you know, in terms of visa, getting people in, all of that stuff. That process, and we talked about it initially, but like that process in itself sometimes makes someone who was actually a legal migrant to the UK become illegal. Illegal essentially means you don't have the paperwork. It means things run out on time, but you're still living here and you're stuck. And there's many people left in that limbo situation because we've not been able to sort ourselves out. And there's so much kind of the barriers that we've created, which, you know, might have looked good initially of actually, we're putting all these controls. But what you've done is you've actually created a bottleneck where you've created more people in the situation where they're near illegal status. And then it's even harder to get them out there. And I don't think it's malintent. I think sometimes that's happened, but it's because of inefficiencies that we need to kind of look at that. And then if you think about different sectors, there's so many sectors calling out for migration. I work at universities, and universities are going through big financial troubles because there's no international students coming anymore. There's no incentive for international. There's no. It's because the international students who wanted to come here, they usually could bring their family with them. So what you'd find is a lot of mature students wanting to upskill themselves, wanting to kind of experience a new culture. I mean, we're in our late 20s, 30s or something. Exactly. So I might want to travel somewhere to just have a new experience, but I'm stopping, you'd essentially stop me from being my partner if I wanted to, or whatever that case might be. But, you know, sectors that are so integral to the country is declining because we've created an environment of that. And there's so many places, so you talked about Elon Musk, but like a lot of tech sectors are looking for that tech experience. And, you know, we've made it harder for ourselves. So if we really want to think like a business, as a country, as a business, I think that's when we need to kind of look at that shortages element and saying, actually, where do we want to kind of put money in or invest money in?
In the UK, illegal immigration is defined in various different ways. You can be, if you arrive in the UK without valid authorization, either because you don't have any authorization or because the documents you have are forged, you're an illegal entrant. You can come to the UK lawfully, but then overstay. A third way you could become an illegal immigrant is if you're an asylum seeker and you've exhausted all your avenues, your application has been refused and all your appeals have been exhausted. If you just remain in the UK, that is unlawful. A fourth way would be if your parents are both here unlawfully and you're born in the UK, you have no lawful right to be in the UK yourself.
What solution does anybody have? Any suggestion, like what solution will be able to we have, you know, this, and people are clearly not very happy. Like what do you guys think, like the solution to this? Not solution,
I guess knowing what country you think does it well would be good.
Yeah, but then also I think we have to bear in mind that when it comes to solutions, there's no clear solution. Every solution will always have, it's like every pro has a con. So deciding the right choice comes down to which pros are that great and which cons are like, it's not ideal, but we can live with that, or it's not such a big con. So like the decision you come to or the decisions you make have to come to weighing that out, especially when it comes to economic concerns. So in terms of solutions, I do think what we're already doing with these requirements of like what does the country need more of and what can these people bring in terms of areas of work, whether it's cleaners, whether it's like lawyers, is a has its benefits, because it's just like sort of help. It's almost like if you want to live with us, you should contribute in some way. You shouldn't just come to live and then either not do anything or just mess it up in some way.
But do you think people come here to just mess it up though?
No, but in the sense of like they might come and just like, just, I don't know, just commit a crime or something like that. So you just almost want to have that in mind of like,
a lot of British nationals committing crime.
That's no different. Like, you're right. British nationals can commit crimes as well. But, like, because essentially when you're inviting people in, you're kind of, like filling up space, you kind of, you like, and this goes for nationals as well. Like, just like there should, I think, if someone can bring extra things like, like contribute, like sort of as a lawyer or as a health practitioner, kind of helping the elderly, then it's even more of a benefit and makes you think, ooh, we could, get something out of this. And as well as just like welcoming, someone.
It's really interesting, right? Because if you think about, during World Cup or Euros and a lot of Brits go abroad, we cause a lot of chaos. Like there's chaos, right? And I think as much as like we want to, we say you're coming to the home, respect the home, I think we also need to do better doing that.
That's true.
Quite often, because we don't, I've seen football fans, so I'll just call it that, football fans going to stadiums and causing chaos and like, so I get what you're saying of, you coming here, you respect it, but it needs to be a two-side
I was going to say it's not just on the people abroad. We also need to play our part and respect them, so it goes both ways to make it work. Because if it's just one or the other, it's not going to have the right effect.
But I think it's kind of dangerous for us to kind of say, oh, everyone's going to cause like rise in criminal records and something. I'd love to see what that stats actually is on,
But it's not just.
Looking this way, like example. What's happening with the migration coming from Ukraine is completely different the way it is from coming from Somalia or from Congo. And I think is a little bit biased with that because both people are running away from a war, right? But the way politicians are welcoming in is completely different. And they say, well, because they are more westernized but the statistics doesn't really, like, it doesn't really, that's not what it's saying. Like, it's the same thing. People are war-prone people, and they're seeing cases of still, these people from a war-torn country doing criminality in England. So it's not about a thing of it's just they're fleeing from war. There's going to be things. We need to create ways to integrate no matter where you're coming from. We need to create a system for it.
It's almost like the system of fleeing from war is almost like a sort of health and safety concern because someone's life could be at risk. So there almost needs to be a sort of group on that front of like, Peter, how do you deal with those kind of people where if they could legally get in, they would, but sometimes there's literally their life is at risk and they're trying to get away and they couldn't do all the legal stuff for some reason. So like something that helps sort those people out in some form or so.
I think, if you think if you opened up your own country, right? Like, and there's a global crisis going on and you see something happening in Congo, you see something happening in Ukraine, in a way, there's kind of like the innate responsibility of let me do something about it, let me help. And I guess it's how you view it. If you view it as like a collective problem, that's when you're thinking, okay, let me do my part this time around. If you just view it as, okay, no, I just want to protect my area, then obviously things are going to look differently. And every country has their own perception on how they want to do things. I think in terms of like countries who probably do it well, in terms of immigration wells, I would say, Canada, Australia, they're very clear and very transparent.
What about-
and then it doesn't cause ambiguity. It doesn't cause kind of, let me go and test my luck or let me go and try. Like, it's very clear on how do I go into there? What do I actually get? What do I not get? Will I get the safety I need, etc. I think those two have been very clear in compared to us.
The concerns in immigration, which I find most inaccurate, are first of all the numbers. So, immigration numbers continuing to increase. They're not. They're decreasing. In 22-23, we had the high, and I think it was about 900,000. Now it's 204,000. So, it's not increasing, it is decreasing. The proportion of illegal migrants is far greater than legal migrants. Again, absolute rubbish. The proportion of people who are born, 25% of people in the UK are migrants. Again, absolute nonsense. Less than 15% were born abroad. So I think the numbers is the big one, because that's often the headline. I think the other one is the lump labour fallacy, which says that any migrant who comes here who steals a job from a UK native, that decreases the number of jobs that we have. It isn't. If you think about all the companies that have been created by migrants who come here and all the jobs they create, when you think about the bigger the population, I mean, most studies would say the larger amount of population increases demand, increases services, and therefore you have more jobs. There are very few studies that indicate or support the idea that a small amount of net immigration decreases jobs. They all point in the opposite direction, that a small amount of immigration is required to keep the economy growing. And that if you have a net zero immigration, then you end up with a greater decrease in the size of your economy than you would otherwise have. So really what you're looking for is the kind of magic number of immigrants to keep the economy going, rather than trying to constantly slash immigration and make it harder for immigrants to come here. And you certainly don't want to be heading towards zero immigration, as proposed by certain right-wing parties. The point about crime, it's never been held that increased immigration increases crime. No study has reflected that when you look at the whole of immigration. Likewise, the idea that they have increased immigration puts pressure on public services. Well, immigrants, they don't have recourse to public funds. So I'm not sure that idea really is borne out with the evidence.
During the COVID lockdown, that's where a lot of Hong Kong expats came during that time to apply to get into UK, right? Because due to some political reason going on, they had to apply and come to England, right? Yeah. And so we had a lot of influx of Hong Kong people then. But what I can see, the main concern is, do we have too many people in the UK? Is the UK able to sustain?
Capacity?
Yes, we're not even talking about illegal or legal immigrants anymore. But if you look at other countries, some country got, like, for example, Hong Kong again, it's got so many people in one place, like concentrated, like blocks of them, and they're doing fine. They're thriving. It's like high GDP, and they're a thriving country, even though they have lots of people of the same kind in one place. So the concern is, do we have enough resources to share with other people, or do we want to keep and also select people who are high skilled or actually contributing, like money-wise, giving a lot of money with entrepreneur visa or business, and giving a lot of money, and we're not giving that much to them because we only got this much to give. So what you want is good immigrants that have giving money, and also giving resources out in a fair way or in a good way.
I just actually thought of a possible solution, or at least one of the many solutions that probably has been debated about, is that you mentioned a collective solution. And I think collective solution should go beyond the two countries involved, but almost like a whole worldwide issue, depending on how many are willing to cooperate, where if we have situations where we're facing overcrowdedness and some people are desperate to get in or like have reasonable good reasons, maybe that don't always fit the barriers, then maybe we need to work with other countries to find, like, if they're looking for asylum, if they can't stay in the UK, maybe they can find asylum in Switzerland or France or somewhere that is
not in the
like,
UK.
I think we're privileged to not have had to think about
not in the
right?
UK.
But
So
if, God forbid, if we are in a situation in the UK where we need to fled and there's something actually going on seriously wrong, I'd like to think people are just, they're not opening up to say, oh, they're Brits. It's more because it's a collective.
yeah, like the world as a whole. So like with other countries that we're close with, we need to almost work together with them to help this, to sort out the solution and to kind of prevent.
Yes.
Worked really.
Going back to
But I want to say one thing which I thought which would be a really, really good solution. So I think I saw, is it Tom Robinson? Is it a guy going
Tommy Robinson.
to people's
Far right.
houses to illegal migrants? So I have a friend, right, who came here as a refugee. And one thing is saying that they don't want us to work because we don't have visa. And in my head, I'm like, so he's doing, cleaning on the side and etc. Whatever he can, because when you look on those benefits, which you're saying that, or people are saying that it's, coming and taking a burden, they can't really do much with that other than surviving, like, especially in London. Like, that's why he needs to do the extra, side work, just to be able to afford stuff. That money is just for them to be able to be at their home, buy food, and travel to whatever meetings they need to do. That's it. And I'm thinking, why don't they then put these people into force of work, giving them a limited, like a provisional working visa for these people? Because most of them are just sitting for 3 years in their hotels or whatever it is, and doing nothing. And not because they don't want to, it's because the system is doing them to do that. My friend, he's a hustler. He's doing, whatever. He said, but I have to do the illegal things because otherwise I cannot, be able to wear nice shoes or whatever. Because, and they're putting me here. I'm telling them I want to work. Yeah, but you need to wait until the migration make a decision of what your refugee, if you're going to stay or not. And people can be in that limbo for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, 3, but yeah, for many, 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 many years. So it's something wrong. And in my head, I'm like, why? It's so easy. Give them a provisional, if they want to be pizza drivers, instead of them driving without a license and just doing it, just to make an extra, give them a provisional.
Make it legal.
Exactly.
Why make it legal?
Exactly. All these cleaners who are doing illegal work, they're refugees or etc. Give them a provisional. That way you can tax them. It helps, So that's when I see these people like going and they just want to put one narrative on the thing. They don't know. Once you have a friend there, then you understand, oh, actually, the system is a little bit weird. Why are these people just at home? Oh, that we're paying for my taxpayers, but nobody's questioning the system.
I don't think the system is functioning as it should be, in my view. I think the reason for that is because you have a lot of people that are being misled by the politicians, and also the media, in my view, is painting a very, very bleak picture of what's currently happening.
I do believe that it isn't working properly at the moment, purely because we've got so much immigration coming into the country, we can't handle it. We don't have the systems to manage it. I feel like our government is letting us down. They're not providing enough support or dealing with cases as quick enough as they should be, which therefore means it's failing. And immigrant people are suffering as well as the local population.
My experience since Brexit is we had a lot of migration that helped,
the NHS and other organisations, but since removing, it's quite clear that the policies have not improved or changed to increase investment in local areas.
It's a big mess, a lot of room for improvement. My wife's lucky, so she's on a spouse visa, she's from the US. So fortunately they're not about to change any of that. They're about to increase the 10-year threshold for getting permanent residence in the UK.